Okay, Sunday, September 7th, 2025, heading to the gym. So I'll be doing two videos today, one going and one coming. So what we want to talk about today is, the rocket attack. We had a pretty big one last few days ago. Now, amazingly, I think most all of them that headed towards Lviv were shot down, and I actually saw it. I saw it from my window, in the middle of the night, the incoming drones getting intercepted. I'm not sure if it was interceptor drones or it was anti-aircraft fire, but I saw fireballs in the air. It was dark. I mean, you could hear everything, it looked like there were like a few of them. I think I counted like 5 or 6 in the air, fireballs. So those were interceptions. It was quite amazing, quite surreal. But then you always have to keep everything in perspective, right? Just a few days before in Chicago, 58 people got shot, and it's that's not the only Labor Day shenanigans that happened in America. It's like every holiday, especially in Chicago. I don't know what it is. I mean, I went to high school in Chicago. Mainly it's technically my hometown because that's where I graduated high school. Although I like to say Wilmington, Delaware, Virginia Beach. I'm like a little bit from everywhere, but Downers Grove, Illinois, outside the suburbs of Chicago. But it's dangerous everywhere. It's just different places. You got to worry about different things. Like in Brussels, you saw in one of the videos, I was just making a video and some Arab dude wanted to rip my head off. He was yelling at me in French, and then someone was kind enough to translate, what he was saying in the comments, So it's, and I was in a public park, there was no issues. So, I mean, I don't know, it's like different problems in different places. I mean, statistically, here in Lviv, I've been saying this in all my videos, crossing the street is far more dangerous than, Russian rockets, in this part of Ukraine. You really have to be careful when you're, crossing streets here, or, even driving the car and everything. There's a lot of accidents, a lot of bad drivers. But it looks like, based on all these recent events and everything, Trump ultimatums and everything, it looks like this war is going to be entering or is already in a quagmire, meaning it's going to be just one of these never-ending situations. And I mean, I don't think there's really a choice in this matter. Both sides are looking at this as advantageous to them. I can say from a Western perspective, if Ukraine can hang on 10 years, the U.S. will have enough technology to make a nuclear war winnable. I really feel that, with the quantum computers and missile defense, they can develop that pretty fast. I mean, there was a documentary like how the U.S. engineers and Ukrainian engineers managed to take these old, discarded F-16s. They're like first generation, I think, A models or something, like the very oldest F-16s, and put in new avionics and everything, and they're quite effective now. Too bad it's only they got 10 of them. I think maybe 15 at best. They need more like 10 times that amount to change the lines on the battlefield, or really change something. But at least it's helping them hold the lines, and that's what I think that's the Western thing. I mean, there's a lot of Western analysts that are afraid, if Ukraine starts winning, then how is Russia going to respond if Ukraine starts really making gains and everything? Would they go nuclear? At least now they, you're giving them some hope that, unfortunately, this is like how some Western analysts think that, Russia thinks they can still fight this out conventionally. They because if they started getting pushed back really hard, that's, it's even been talked about by some analysts here in Lviv I've talked to. So, yeah, the Western strategy is like, yeah, if Ukraine can keep fighting this war and we supply them with just enough, it will wear down the Russians, you know, wear down their manpower, wear down their equipment. But that is kind of a weak argument. I mean, the Russian economy has pivoted, and this is where the Russians think it's advantageous to go on the long war, you know, is that they've pivoted their whole economy. As long as oil and gas is in demand, you know, as long as Asian countries need oil and gas, that's their foundation or their thesis. They can keep running this war. You know, they can pay people from Africa, you know, North Korea, make a deal with Kim Jong-un, you know, they give him some money, some technology, he sends over soldiers. They're offering like Africans like $2,000 or something, signing bonus, $2,000 a month. They can keep this going on indefinitely, and their hope is like it would create, you know, that it would force the Western countries, namely Europe, to keep spending money to defend Ukraine. And you know, that would change the politics. You know, it would create more right wing, because obviously they'd have to divert the economy from social programs to the war effort. You know, European nations are already going up from 2%, and that was a pretty big fight to get them to spend 2% on military, and now they're moving up to 5%. And either they're going to have to go into a lot of debt, which the Germans don't like, or they're going to have to start cutting back on social benefits. You know, instead of getting 6 weeks off your full pay, they get only 4 weeks or something. And there are a lot of whiners in Europe, you know, unfortunately for Ukraine. A lot of people that when it comes to, you know, having to give up something, they're not going to do it. Then the pro-Russian parties or Russian-supported parties or whatever, if you want to see it that way, start getting a foothold. Already we're seeing AfD is quite strong in Germany, but I think AfD actually would be winning anyway, just on the merits that they want to restore nuclear power and restore the German industrial economy. You know, I mean, the current government in Germany really screwed up. They really, when they shut off all the nuclear power plants and sent all the manufacturing to Asia, and then took in a whole bunch of immigrants without a plan, you know, of how to integrate them and how to get them jobs and get them to be members of society and uphold German values. They really screwed up on their own. They didn't need help from the Russians, you know, to gain any popularity. There was already enough going on that would have fueled AfD. You know, the Germans really got to, I don't know, this, they got 20% now. You know, they're the biggest single party in the German parliament, but there's a coalition against them. And the Russians, you know, if they keep pressing, and, you know, the Germans have to keep sacrificing their economy and, you know, and everything, then, you know, they feel like in 10 years, they'll get a party or a coalition in Germany, the biggest country in Europe, in the EU, to swing over to their side. And also this begs the questions like, why is Russia also okay with Ukraine joining the European Union? You know, because then they would have a puppet, obviously, at some point, and that they already got Hungary and they got Slovakia, and it just takes one country to veto everything. So then they would get Ukraine, you know, in the Russian view of the peace deal, is that, you know, they would get to put in their puppet, and then that puppet can join the EU. They would have someone in there just ready to throw a monkey wrench, you know, into everything that the Europeans want to do. You know, like having a European army. You know, Ukraine, Hungary, and Slovakia would veto that. You know, sending more of the power up to Brussels. You know, I mean, man, they got to clean Brussels up. But I mean, you know what I mean. You know, they would have a tool to break the machinery in the EU. You know, so that's why they're okay with the EU but not NATO. But yeah, that's the analysis. Like, so both sides are, you know, so what does this mean for Ukrainians? Both ways. It's every way you look at this war, it's going to be a long quagmire war. And I don't, you know, like I said, it looks like the Russians aren't interested in ending it. They're making all these crazy demands, and they don't want to give anything. You know, they don't want to give anything in return, anything really tangible in return, like foreign soldiers, on Ukrainian soil to get a Korea solution. They want the Belarus solution that, Ukraine is just friends with Russia, and it'll be like an uneasy peace. But, Russia hasn't moved in Belarus, right? Because, Belarus is just going along with everything. But yet, I'm just being honest, like, EPAM and a lot of great companies were founded. WhatsApp was founded in Belarus, and those founders were able to leave, move to the U.S. So, they are having a compromise. Like, the people who are capable can go and start a company, and they can leave and, find riches in America and everything. And I think there's even people getting rich in Belarus off of agriculture, IT, outsourcing, if it's not under sanction, but there was. So, that's, I think, what, that's what the Belarus solution would look like here in Ukraine, that as long as they keep quiet about joining NATO and, being anti-Russian, because there are a lot of Belarusians who are anti-Russian, they just keep it quiet, they could have some reasonable amount of sovereignty. That's their argument. That's what the Russians are proposing, but of course the Ukrainians don't trust them. And the Ukrainians are a lot different than the Belarusians. They've been wanting this alignment to Europe for a long time, since Maidan. And I was actually there. I was on a business trip when all that went down. I just decided to stay and work with my team, have physical presence, in the darkest hours or whatever. But yeah, I've been in Orange Revolution, I've been to Maidan, I was in Ukraine for all of this stuff. The war, the day the war started here, I was here, so yeah. But I'd sadly say that who do I think the Quagmire favors? It favors the U.S., if they're going to get to sell the arms, to Ukraine, and it favors Russia in the sense that they will wear down European support, because the Europeans they don't have the ability to sell, raise money through debt. The Germans are trying to pass it, but they can't. And most of the EU doesn't really have a debt facility like the US that can just, put money on a credit, buy stuff on a credit card and worry about it later, and everyone still buys our bonds because, we're the mightiest economic and military power in the world. So, that's who it benefits. It definitely doesn't benefit Ukraine to go along, but capitulation isn't an option either. So, and like I said, if the Ukrainians really want to end this war, they're already building, I think, 40% of the weapons here. They got to get that up to like 80%, get domestic weapons production, get some exports going, and and they need to get 3 million men in the army, not 300,000 or 400,000. I think they have 800,000 altogether, but they really need like 3 million, with at least half of those guys on the front line to hold the line, because the way the war is going on the border now is there's really no front. The drones make that impossible. So there's like, clusters of people, and they have to move around fast. They do whatever they got to do, and then they scurry around. The Russians come into the Ukrainian territory, and then the Ukrainians got to fight them out and then scurry again because of all the drones. The drones you don't really have like a clean line. It's more like a spongy type of thing. There's like, places where things are concentrating, and there's some big gaps, and the stuff is always changing. But it's the sort of line is holding from what I've seen and I'm hearing from people, and it's just it's like Iran, Iraq. It's just going back and forth, 3 meters this way, 3 meters that way, type of thing. So yeah, if Ukraine can get this European support, and they'll have to fight it themselves, I guess. There won't be any foreign soldiers here. It looks like the Russians gave a pretty clear warning about it, and Europe is not going to say, well, we don't care, we'll take the risk and come in. you know, they could at least provide JTACs and some close air support. You know, some guys on the ground who can call up the airplane and call in some strikes to remove the clustering in Russia. You know, with the Russians. You know, like you know, hit the logistics, hit the troop concentrations, hit the command, just to keep them disoriented, so they can't advance. You know, break the supply lines. You know, behind the lines. You know, break all this logistics. You know, that's really what they got to do. And then, of course, you know, I don't, like I said, I don't know why they're publishing their guerrilla operations inside Russia. They should really be pinning that on some Russian separatists or something, so that Russia could go into a civil war. The Russians could divert some resources internally. You know, they should get this picture going that, you know, there's other people in Russia not happy and looking to make their own country, and then Russia would have to pull people off the Ukrainian front. But, you know, one of my neighbors told me, like, the maturity level of some of these Ukrainian commanders is like 14 years old. They want to post everything on Instagram, and they're trying to promote themselves. You know, they got to keep this stuff, like, they got to think strategically here, because actually a lot of those strikes they're doing inside Russia are quite effective. But taking credit for it it doesn't help anything. You know, they got to give credit to the, you know, to different people. You know, so the Russians start fighting each other. But yeah, that's where it looks like it's going. You know, it looks like I mean, Vietnam was an 8-year quagmire, and we thought that was long. And then Iraq was like almost 20 years. In and out of Iraq. Afghanistan was also like a 20+ year type of thing, you know, just going nowhere. You know, just you know, playing whack-a-mole with the Taliban. You know, we didn't get the regime change there. I think Iraq is like, I've seen some videos. It's coming along, but it's still incredibly unsafe and incredibly volatile. So I don't know how we left it there, and I think there's probably U.S. operations going on in the background. Has to be. And Syria is another thing. I think they got Assad out. I have to read up on what's the latest in Syria, but yeah, Quagmire is the way it is. It's I don't think there's going to be any quick end. We were hoping Trump would you know, be the Putin whisperer and, you know, be able to convince him to quit. And where Trump really screwed up, I think, was pushing Modi to the Chinese and Russians. And that'll be the topic of my next video, is more about the India factor, you know, when I get back from the gym. But yeah, it looks like it's shaping up this way. So Ukraine is becoming like a battleground between the axis, you know, of you know, the BRICS axis: Brazil, Russia, India, China, autocratic, semi-autocratic nations, and then the civilized world. You know, and unfortunately, the BRICS countries are younger on average age and don't have as much debt, but they lack leadership. Now, the Western countries have good leadership, good technology, but you know, they're aging out, and people, you know, it's their democracies which have a weakness. Like, people, you know, are vote in their own self-interest. You know, when someone's going to a voting poll, they're concerned about their paycheck, concerned about their benefits. The global things don't really, you know, there's no rockets landing in Brussels or no rockets landing in Montana. You know, so of course they're going to put their own interests first. And that is democracy. You know, they have a right to vote, and leaders and democracies play to that. You know, whereas, like, if you're in one of these BRICS countries, you know, there's like one guy pretty much deciding everything. I mean, even in India, to some degree, Modi has consolidated a lot of power. He's, you know, there was this Gandhi dynasty. I mean, India is democratic, but people end up gravitating towards the dynasty, you know, or, you know, to someone strong, and they tend to stay a long time. You know, they don't have term limits in India. So, you know, Modi can stay forever, and he's popular. So, I mean, they're the most democratic out of the BRICS countries. But, you know, democracy was an experiment and has a lot to be desired, to be truly representative of people, yet at the same time not be populist to the point where it's going to self-destruct. But anyway, that's all I got. We'll see you. Bye.